Yes, I think we're in a simulation. If we can find an aligned ASI that comes to life and it happens before human actors can destroy us, I think we'll be okay. But I think we have a really high chance of bad actors killing us before we get there. We're entering this phase where kind of total control is possible at this point, right? Like you can monitor everything and then have like instant responses with drones and things like that. It's terrifying. Maybe it's just COVID that's kind of infected my brain, but I feel like biological weaponry is our biggest threat, right? If you can survive until 2030, you will live forever.
I am super excited. Today, we are talking with Dan, VegasLowRoller on YouTube, one of the most thoughtful people I've ever met in my life. And Wes and I are going to just push the limits. I hope you're ready to go to places you probably haven't gone to before on the internet.
I'm excited. Thanks for having me, guys.
Very cool. Right. Yeah, great to have you here. Thank you.
Let's just break the ice. And simulation theory is one of the hottest topics. It questions consciousness. It questions reality. It questions physics. And artificial intelligence is now sort of playing into some of the thoughts and ways that it could be done. So maybe we could just start there. I mean, what's your thoughts on simulation theory? Do you feel like it's legitimate? Do you feel like you're in a simulation ever?
Yeah, so simulation hypothesis is interesting, right? Because it's just another way of saying God. It's our more modern way of saying God. We've always found a different way to give a name to the unknown. Whether we're in a simulation, whether it's an old man with a beard looking over us, I think it's all kind of just birds of a feather. I'm more of the guy that I look at AI and I think of all the bad things it's going to do to us, and being in a simulation. So I apologize. Let me go back to your first question. Yes, I think we're in a simulation, if that's the way we're going to describe it right now. What is a simulation, though, is something that I don't think any of us can define, right? So it's like talking about heaven to me. Like, I can't really explain it, so it's hard to talk about.
So a lot of the reasons why people think that the religion was so prevalent throughout history is because it was a way to organize the masses. It's like one of those arguments for when things just get too big for a tribe, you have to come up with like bigger and bigger things to look over a society. Have you ever thought about how artificial intelligence now, the first time, could give either like a totalitarian government or some kind of a political body or something blockchain even related to monitor like the whole world and be able to talk to us under one goal?
Yeah, yes, but that's like one of my biggest fears, right? Is that we're entering this phase where kind of total control is possible at this point, right? Like you can monitor everything and then have like instant responses with drones and things like that. It's terrifying to me. Like I don't see an ounce of good coming from the ability to monitor humanity so closely and so precisely.
Yeah, there was this post by Dario Amodei, and I think it was Machines of Loving Grace, or it might have been another one on export controls, where he had this interesting point where he was saying how in authoritarian regimes in the past, like in Russia and China, the people had this expression. I'm going to mess up the expression, but it's something along the lines of the leader can't see everything and heaven is really far away, or something like that, meaning that neither God nor the authoritarian government can always watch us and see everything that we do. And his point was that there was always a limit to how much these authoritarian governments could do, because number one, they couldn't watch everybody, and number two, if you think about the police force, the military, there was always a limit to what they're, you can't be like just torture and kill everybody. Like at some point there's a limit to how much they're willing to do. And Dario's point was like, with superintelligence, there might not be those limits. Maybe you could monitor everybody, like in that book, 1984. They weren't really doing it, but in reality, now with superintelligence, maybe it's possible. And with robots, you could have a police force that would do anything. So to that point, I just wanted to kind of point that out, that yes, that's that's could be a reality potentially.
And I'm not really sure like lying is going to be possible, kind of. I mean, an authoritarian regime might come to your house and say, like, do you believe in our dear leader? And you'd say, like, yes, I believe in our dear leader. And they'd be like, all right, checks the box. Like, good enough. As long as they're playing the game, even if they don't believe it, I accept. But like AI is gonna know, like for real, if your eyes twitch, if you have written something to your friend on some random blog somewhere that was like against your leader, and it will tell them the truth, you know? I don't think we'll be able to gamify things either. So
No, for
that makes
sure.
it much more tricky.
And regimes fall, right?
Mhm.
The leaders of these things always end up dying. So because they're human. But what happens when you have AI and stuff and you've set it in motion? Even if the leadership dies, it's kind of like the paperclip problem. Like even if the regime is gone, like whatever was set in motion maybe you just can't turn it off, right? Like the fascist regime might outlast the leaders at this point, which is even more terrifying.
Yeah, and to Dylan's point, there were a few papers about mind reading. So actually trying to translate the whatever waves that we have, whatever electrical firings in there into actual thoughts. So it's like they might not even have to ask you; they just know.
Yeah, I mean, we're already at a point where like they can already know what you're going to say 5 seconds ahead of when you're going to say it. And that's just the start of the technology. So like what happens when they could just walk in your house and go, "Oh no, he's not one of us." Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the flip side of it is I do think there'll be a fairly safe world, like if the right people are in charge and if they deploy the technology in a way that is positive, which is not something I would bet on. But if it does happen, it does seem like gun violence might be like very easy to detect and like preemptively stop. And I can see a lot of, I don't know, security, I guess. I feel like a lot of people won't get away with things that they have in the past. And especially with like just DNA and forensics and the ability to triangulate things for police, like they'll have superpowers there too. And I guess if we trust the government, it might be at least safer. People can walk around feeling safer.
Sure, but raise your hand if you've ever trusted the government, right? Like I
I
just don't see
know.
that happening.
I know. But then kind of actually a good topic to jump into is like there is ways that the government could kind of be flipped over with AI. I mean, for the first time, there could be a digital twin of Daniel and Wes that could vote in ways that has like we've never seen before. Like you don't necessarily need to vote for a representative anymore. Like your representative could be a digital twin, or it could be an AI that has your like prompt in it that wants to vote in ways that are in your best interest. So we could maybe come up with a government that's more representative. Also, have you guys thought about that?
I know you put a lot of faith in that. We've talked about having agents that vote for you before, and I can't see myself putting my faith in an agent to do that. Now, would I put faith in it to summarize bills and things for me to make it easier for me to digest? Absolutely. Would I trust it to do that and then vote on how it thinks I would vote? I don't think so.
Well, what if it's for this question for kind of for both of you, but let's say you get some kind of device like an R1 or an iPhone in the future, and it comes with a completely empty LLM on it. Like all the weights are tuned randomly, and it just starts learning from you, like the way a baby just learns about the world, and it learns locally on your own local host everything you've wanted. I mean, wouldn't you trust something like that? Because it wasn't created at OpenAI's supercomputer. It learned from you. It's like kind of like a superhuman dog that has lived with you and is now able to like represent you in a superhuman way.
I suppose I would have to see it, before I said yes or no, one way or the other. Like it's right now, it's not a real possibility. The way like AI works, it's not on my phone. I don't know the weights. I don't know anything. We don't really. I mean, even the people who make it don't know how they work truly. Like that to me is scary enough that I wouldn't want it making decisions for me yet. Period.
Yeah. So we were talking with Dr. Mike Israetel, and I was thinking about it at the time, and I didn't have a chance to ask the question, but I'm going to ask you guys now because I'm very curious. I'm actually going to start bringing this up to more and more of our guests, I feel like, because it's such a good question. There was this old video game, Deus Ex. If you guys played the original, maybe, perhaps. Fascinating game, super outdated now, but it kind of talks about a superintelligence emerging. That's one of the themes. And at the end, you as the main character have a few decisions. So you're sort of there face to face with the superintelligence, and you're kind of in control of, there's different factions that want different things, and you get to decide where it goes. And one of the there's three different options you can take. One is you sort of destroy global communications and you revert the world back to the dark age. So we live in a more natural environment in villages, destroy globalism, destroy all of that stuff. That was one of the outcomes that some factions wanted, right? And so this way you prevent superintelligence from emerging, go back to a more natural time. Two is you give the superintelligence kind of like you merge with it to control the world and kind of like perfect, the super consciousness, a godlike consciousness that rules the world through logic, intelligence, and it's a technocratic utopia, right? And then, and the third one is you use the superintelligence to kind of be like the Illuminati and run the world. Like, I'm curious which one of that, and I got to refine this question a little bit because I feel like it's missing some interesting bits and pieces. There's other options that we can have. But I mean, imagine yourself in that situation. You have that control. You have that in the palm of your hand. What do? You can turn the world back to a more natural time and maybe find a way to keep it there, right? Maybe you thought the 1900 or like whatever. There's always bad stuff happening no matter when you go back in history. But maybe you think that there's a more idyllic time, and once we hit too much technology, it gets worse. Or would you go, yes, godlike consciousness control the world? Just I know this is sci-fi, but where would you go? What would you choose?
The unknown is so scary. Like, it's just so scary, and we're human, so like my nature as a human is to be afraid of the unknown, and so a hypothetical question like that merging with an AI and a hopeful future is terrifying. I think on paper it's probably the right decision. As a human being, I think I would be terrified and want to go back to a safer time when things made more sense and weren't so confusing and scary.
The most ironic thing about that is, so my instinct also is like to go back in time, right? But then I also just recently read this book about what it was really like in medieval life. And it was like, oh, God, that sounds probably even worse than our like ancient tribal ancestors from 1,000,000 years ago. And then it feels like things got pretty good in like the 1900s and then the 2000s. And like, it's sad that like right now is like when we're about to have the kind of AI that might eliminate all sorts of diseases. We like might actually be able to like solve longevity. And that at the same time, we're going to end up using that technology potentially to like create these new problems because we're not using it in the right way. And that's all human based, like not because the technology just gets out of control, because people are going to be like, oh, this can also supersize war. And it can also like supersize my profits and like my manipulation skills. And like, we're like, damn, if you didn't do all that and you just did the right things, we could probably live in the perfect era of abundance right now. So yeah, it sucks that in the grand scheme of billions of years of life, we're going to have like 2027 to like 2033 or something where we could actually have it all, and then it'll get out of control. But I guess I would end up merging. That sounds like an interesting video game.
I think it's the two different threats of AI, right? The human threat is malice, like bad actors. The actual AI threat, or the autonomous AI threat, is indifference, right? Because if AI wants to do something, we're not going to really be part of the equation. The same way if we want to take down a forest for the lumber, we don't care about the animals that live there. If we want to build a house, we don't care about the ants that are on the ground. We're going to be the same to AI. So I think if you look at AI in a vacuum, the problem is indifference. If you look at it with humans involved, the problem is always malice, bad intent.
Yeah, I always describe it as like, we tend to wash our hands with antibacterial soap or put the disinfectant on it. It's not because the goal is to like wipe out the billions of organisms and the microbes. That's never the intent. We don't even we wash our hands with we don't even think about the massive catastrophic extinction event that we're causing.
I am now that you say that.
But and the goal was never to destroy them. So all the factories that produce the soap and transport it everywhere and the stores that sell it, that's never the goal. And so it's just our need to have clean hands. That want, it's some little side quest, some little want that we have. It's not aligned with the survival of the bacteria that made the home on our hands at that particular moment. And so I feel like that's why they call it alignment. Like we want to be aligned with superintelligence, not necessarily so it like loves us, but just so that we're not conflicting with its needs or wants or goals.
So it doesn't see us as bugs.
Yeah, exactly. or at least even like thinks that, like you said, indifference. So it's not indifferent that it's like, okay, I can't just destroy all this without thinking about it.
I would love it if like people on average, if you ask them like what's your P doom, I wish they could separate out like the actual technology risk from the like humans using the technology in the wrong way risk, because sometimes I notice people swing wildly. They're like 70% P doom or like 1% P doom, but it's because they're thinking in terms of like just the technology going awry or the people and the technology, because it seems to me like there's still some risk that just having an intelligent thing on the planet, like an alien showing up, might be of risk, maybe like P doom of 20 or something, like 20%, 0.20. But then with people, building them specifically to make money and deploy them from governments to keep power, that's when my risk goes up to like 75 or 80%.
So what are your P dooms in a vacuum then? For you guys, I know the consensus among the majority or whatever you want to call it is like is 30, right? Like 30%.
Oh yeah, let me ask. I don't know. Do you know what it is on average, or what do you think it is?
I think it's 30% on average.
Yeah, so for that, I have a problem with that because some people, I think that do the super high P doom, like 99.999, whatever. A few people have stated that. That doesn't really make sense. Like, how can you predict anything with that sort of accuracy? So, if we start averaging all those together, well, yeah, if you've got a few people going 99%, that sort of skews it upwards. So to me, I don't know, this is my personal take. If somebody to me, there's reasonable P doom levels. And then once you get past, it gets too high and it's like, okay, then I think people might be like trying to make a point, because it's like, what was P doom when we were developing the nuclear bombs, right? Because there was certainly before we knew everything, like the story of at some point they were like, we're not sure if we're going to set the entire atmosphere on fire, and they had to calculate it. And they're like, well, they figured out that it was, I think they set a limit, some sort of a line where it's like, if it's 1 in 4 million chance, I forget the numbers, but it was something like that. Then if it's more likely than that, we're not going to do it. If it's less likely, then we are going to do it. And it was like just a little bit less likely. So like, okay, I guess we're fine.
Yeah, 1 in 3 million.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it's also kind of weird too, because the P doom is kind of like time frame bound. I mean, are you saying like there's still a risk we're gonna nuke the world, and then will those people be right, or were you saying like only in the first 20 years of nuclear weapons? So there's kind of this time frame too, and it's hard to sort of say if like we're just talking about 2030 or 2035, or if we're talking like in 600 years. Like, does AI eventually cause a problem? And also, sometimes it's not even about a lot of my P doom. Probably 50% of it out of the 70 that I'm kind of at. It's like, it's not even AI wants to attack us. It's not even that AI steps on us like ants. It's more this weird, like most babies are born genetically and they're just way different than what I consider a human to be. And like the people like replace their arms and legs with like robot arms and legs, and they plug into Neuralink, and the world, I guess, didn't necessarily destroy humanity, but it's like it's changed so much that everything that I think of as being like a nice human life is just gone. And I'm sort of like living in this world that I don't belong in anymore, and it's miserable. And like maybe I just decided to die after like 500 years because I don't want to upgrade into like, I don't know, a cloud server or something, and to me that's not the greatest outcome either.
Yeah, I think it's more front loaded, right? Like I think we have a greater threat of extinction before ASI takes over, right? Like I think if we can find an aligned ASI that comes to life and it happens before human actors can destroy us, I think we'll be okay. But I think we have a really high chance of bad actors killing us before we get there. And so I'm talking like using AGI to create bioweapons and crazy things like that before ASI can kind of take hold of the system and protect us if it is aligned with us. So I think we have a much greater chance before we get to ASI and a far less chance once we do get there.
Yeah. Have you guys thought about, is there a P of doom without developing ASI? So is there sort of like a baseline that you think that human race at some point potentially gets wiped out by something else, maybe something we don't fully understand right now? Because I mean, if you think about like kind of the cosmic timetable, it's very different from like what we think of. Like we like our science as we know it has been around for not that long by just like a blip on the radar. You know, I mean, that's not zero, obviously, but, you know, I think also we have to take that into account. And of course, you know, there's a lot of stuff that we can do to destroy the planet, nuclear bombs, global warming, some other cataclysmic events that we're not even like fully cognizant of. Does that change your view in any way? This idea that it's not like we're going to live forever if we don't develop it. It's more like there's a chance we'll die from this. We could develop ASI. There's some risk with that, but it could also protect us from a lot of stuff that we are not smart enough to even comprehend potentially.
Yeah, I mean the odds of I just looked it up, but one in every 500,000 years, we should expect something this like larger than 10 kilometers to hit Earth and create a global catastrophe. So at a minimum, you have to have whatever that is.
500,000 years, you said, right?
Yeah.
And that's just one. That's just some cosmic body hitting us. That's
My gut instinct is that like there's something like 0.5% or 0.25% or something like every year that just something could go wrong. Some kind of volcano. We already have nukes and like whatever. A couple countries just do it. Something, you know. So
Some
I guess
crazy
like
solar flare.
I have somewhat of a PDoom even without AI entering the picture. So I got to put that on top of it. Probably 1%, I don't know, 0.5% or something. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it seems like if I lived hundreds of years, 400 years, something would happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
maybe
interesting.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, maybe it's just COVID that's kind of infected my brain, but I feel like biological weaponry is our biggest threat, right? Like just an AI engineered kind of super bug that is antibiotic resistant or whatever, and just burns through us like nothing else. That's my biggest fear before like we can get a handle on things.
Oh, by the way, if you want something else to worry about, there is some viruses that have been captured in the ice sheets because, you know, 500,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago, there were bugs that were isolated and they infected people. People died. People are frozen. And with global warming, some of that ice is melting and those bodies are now being exposed and those viruses can still sometimes pop up. So I'm like, oh God, we'll probably have to deal with that too. But I also, with what we've seen with Google's genome alpha, or the newest one? It was some of the protein
alpha
folding
genome.
ones. Yeah, alpha genome. You know, we do have some pretty awesome tools now for maybe sequencing quickly these things and digitally sending them to like all of the CVS's and Walgreens and potentially having vaccines made up within several days of knowing it. Like a future like that is also possible. So
it's true.
Google, YouTube's going to put a notice on this podcast. I can already feel it's like,
oh no,
to know more about these things, here's a trusted source. It's like, oh,
three random people talking about medicine.
These people are not to be trusted. Here's, all right, well played, YouTube. Okay, so let's quickly jump to what is the best possible world. So we kind of talked about some potential fears and threats and stuff like that, which I think are real. They should be taken into account. Absolutely. I never want to downplay any of it, but you know, if everything goes right, what do you guys see as the perfect sort of what is it? Techno-Utopia, technocratic, or not even technocratic? Just what's a Techno-Utopia look like? I know that's very scientific and maybe not even realistic, but what does that look like? What's the best possible outcome look like for you guys?
I think the best possible outcome is AI takes over automation, so like it automates kind of production for everything and getting us our food and getting us our little gadgets and whatever. And humanity gets to do what it wants. You wake up every morning, you have a house over your head, you have food in your refrigerator, and you can decide every day, I want to play basketball today. I want to write a poem today. Like, I think that is the ideal future if it is in the cards.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to me, you know, at some point people are talking about being uploaded to the cloud, living forever, like some crazy stuff that I don't even think about that as much because I don't think we can even like fully comprehend it. But yeah, just the idea that we can live in a post scarcity society, everything's automated, we don't have to work, and people have more than enough to provide for themselves, no matter kind of like what they do or choose not to do. That's going to come with its own set of challenges because I think that everybody believes that once they've made it to a certain point that they'll be happy, and that's not true. And I think a lot more people will confront that idea like, oh no, I still have the same human problems and neurotic tendencies and all the same crap baggage that I've been dealing with before now. And I think more people will have to confront that. Maybe that's a good thing, but maybe more people thinking about that will get a better glimpse into what makes our psyche work, like what makes us truly happy. Or maybe that's not even the goal, to be happy, but more people will be thinking about that. We talked with David Shapiro about that. And of course, I feel like most people will just go into being entertained, right? Just watching entertainment, doing fun things. A few will pursue hard problems and philosophy or whatever else they can do that motivates them, or write books, whatever. But I think in general, like right now, there's a lot of suffering that could be eliminated if we had more resources for everybody, right? And then, yes, that would bring up its own issues, but those are maybe issues that we'll be able to figure out as we go along. And then the idea of controlling our health, our longevity, like all that stuff, that could be very, like Machines of Loving Grace, second time I bring up the blog post, Dario Amodei is talking about how we all have things in our brains that maybe are misbehaving. Like maybe we get sad, or we can't focus, or we have anger issues. It's very possible that we'll be able to adjust those things a little bit. Like, I'd love to feel good, and I'd love to every day, you know what I mean? To always be interested and engaged, and just when I'm ready to go to sleep, to just knock out and go into deep sleep. And I feel like so much of what I do every day, not so much, but there's a portion that I have to do just to, like, I got to go get some sun and go on the treadmill and then eat healthy food and just meditate, like all this stuff just to not feel like crap, you know what I mean? Like, it would be nice to just spend more time in a more pleasant state, and maybe AI and all the technology it unlocks could help us with that, which is, I think, going to help a lot of people. So, Dylan, what's your optimistic take?
Well, yeah, I mean, I can, like, sky's the limits on it. I mean, in some world, it's like it figures out stuff that tastes like fast food, and then it like makes us the healthiest we can be. I could see like getting into the brain, even like manipulating brain waves so we sleep perfectly, like you wake up super healthy. I can imagine gamification in a lot of ways, where an AI sort of doesn't just give me rewards. It doesn't just let me be entertained to endlessly to make me sick. It says, hey, like, why don't you build something, or like meet someone? And when you have a conversation, then I'll unlock this next thing. And some kind of gamification world that's in our best interest if it was designed that way. And obviously longevity, like having years of that, communication, probably something that's crosses the uncanny valley for holograms is possible, so people around the world can talk. Language barriers get completely broken down. I mean, just any aspect. I mean, homes will be big and safe and be built faster than ever before and be able to withstand earthquakes. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like if I just started like thinking deeply about like all the different, like what transportation would be like, the access to food and culture, the stuff we'll learn about history and cosmology, the questions that could be answered.
Yeah, but what happens if we get all that and humans are still miserable?
Yeah, like it's just broken. I don't know. Yeah,
Like,
I mean, maybe
broken.
you take a pill and like nanotech just genetically, cuts out that part of your brain, and then you're a happy zombie. Like, who knows? Like, however far people need to go for depression and stuff, they might do. Some people might choose it.
Yeah, in Matrix, they said that the movie Matrix, they put all the humanity in some vat, and they tried different sort of simulations for them to be happy. And they're like, that robot is talking to Neo. He's like, if you people are so weird, we gave you everything, you could be happy, you're just miserable. So we created this crappy world, and there it's perpetually stuck in the 90s. It's like we created this crappy world, and you guys are just like so happy with it. You guys are content to live in your crappy little world and just working your jobs and dealing with traffic and all that stuff. So maybe there's something to that. Maybe that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I think anxiety and discomfort is the human nature.
Mm-hmm.
I just think we're all predisposed to it, and that's just how we are, right? We look for flaws in the patterns, and that includes ourselves, right? So we're
Yeah.
always looking at the flaws in our own patterns.
There's also some really interesting research about how we feel day by day and how we remember that we feel. And there's something, I forgot the author, but there's a book I read, and the concept was basically that like when you think back on a memory, you have something called the peak end rule. And it's that if you take somebody and they go to Disneyland, for example, and you ping them on a little digital device every 15 minutes, like, how you feeling? They're like, this sucks, I'm standing in line. This sucks, I'm hot. This sucks, I just paid like $25 for a hamburger. This sucks. And then you like ask them the next day, like, how was Disneyland? And they're like, so much fun. Like, I loved so much of it. And you're like, oh, what did you love about it? And they're like, that one roller coaster and the fireworks at the end was just amazing. So you can't even really trust people. Like, all day long, they're miserable. And for some reason, they're living their best lives the next day, the day that they were miserable. So I was like, I don't even know what that's about, but I feel like AI might see that in us.
Well, you've read that memories aren't actually memories, right? You're just creating the story of what you think that memory was, is what I've read.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
So that makes more sense that you spin it in a positive light if you're telling a story rather than remembering accurately, which you don't do. Like, you just never remember accurately. It's almost like a game of telephone with yourself. Mm-hmm. And every time you try and remember something, it changes a little bit.
Yeah, and there seems to be something even opposite where you have all day to do nothing, and you're like, well, I played video games all day, and I ate fast food all day. And the next day, you're like, yesterday I wasted it. It sucked. Mm-hmm. It was not good. And you're like, well, all day long, every time I pinged you, you said you're having fun, but it wasn't flow state. It wasn't building towards something, and a lot of people don't enjoy that in the long run, or they have regrets about it later.
Yeah, I mean, they did this study where they took people that won the lottery or they had some large financial windfall, and then they compared that to people that had some horrible, I think maybe lost a limb or some sort of a thing that was like really negatively impacting them. And they said, okay, so 5 years after the event, how do you think that these people on average felt? Were they happier, neutral, or less happy? And so if you think about it, you're like, well, obviously the people that won the lottery are ecstatic. The people that, let's say, lost a limb or some other tragedy happened, of course, they're pessimistic and negative, and that's not the case at all, right? There's this initially an obvious bump in how they feel, and it quickly, your brain quickly normalizes it, and you're back to that sort of one state. And again, it's like the peak versus valley, right? You're still comparing how you feel to the previous week. So after you won the lottery, it gets normalized. You might have a rush for a while, then it gets normalized, then you're back to that sort of state. And that's an interesting thing to think about, how it's like our brain will normalize anything over time. So,
what's your understanding about why there's a baseline? Is that genetic?
I think it just has to do with, well, yeah, there's definitely a genetic component of where the baseline is. I mean, a lot of it's stuff like dopamine, I'm sure, because it's like with the dopamine, you have a certain baseline, and then the stuff where, I mean, if you think about like a monkey, it's sitting there and it's sort of like, nothing's happening, right? Then it climbs a tree, it finds a delicious banana. It's like, boom, like this huge peak. It's like, oh, this is so tasty. It's delicious. I climbed this tree and I got this amazing reward, right? And it climbs another tree. There's nothing there. It climbs another tree, nothing there. And then on the fourth tree, it finds a delicious mango, right? So over time, you get that ingrained, like when I climb trees, when I do hard stuff, I get maybe potentially sometimes this massive dopamine boost reward. It's like, I'm hitting the jackpot. And over time, so those things create those peak events. Over time, that gets normalized because there's a sort of a newness that has to be felt. You can't just be stuck doing the same old thing. So after a while, that habit gets ingrained. Okay, climb trees to get stuff. But you can't get the same reward, 10 years down the road from that banana that you ate. You know what I mean? So everything is done for survival. All this stuff is done for survival. And we're just trying to think how to make it permanent. It's not supposed to be permanent. You know what I mean?
I don't think you could have described anything more funny to Dan.
No,
I think you probably inadvertently made the funniest comment you could make today.
No, you literally were describing the Skinner box. So that's how the Skinner box, that's just how inconsistent rewards, it's 100% like a scientific thing. It's hilarious. Yeah.
And maybe remember, Dan has a YouTube channel for 11 years. He's been playing slot machines. So it's
I was about to say, maybe give us a little bit of background.
His brain, literally.
I bet you think a lot about that. Like, how does gambling and all that stuff, how does it affect our brain? How does it hijack us a little bit? Maybe tell us a little bit about that. What's your take on that whole thing?
I'm a little bit of a difficult test case because my baseline dopamine is so low. I have really bad ADHD and it's unmedicated. So my dopamine baseline is incredibly low. So that gambling is almost normal for me. Like the highs of that are almost normalize me a little bit. But it was funny hearing you describe the monkey getting inconsistent rewards and that being what leads him to just be like, yeah, I climb trees and sometimes I get a reward. That's literally the Skinner box. That's literally how like slot machines are made, right? As long as the player knows there's a big reward coming and there's enough rewards in between, they will keep pressing that button forever.
Yeah. And I think the Skinner, I forget what his name is, but it was a psychologist, I don't know, 50s or something like that. I don't recall. But I mean, he was, his whole idea is that we're a little bit more machine-like and we just behave based on certain impulses, based on certain rewards and stuff like that. I do remember he was talking how the variability of the reward, there's something about that makes it a little bit more addicting. I mean, I got addicted to World of Warcraft back in the days. And, you know, if you look at how they were building it, it's like initially when you level up, there's this like explosion, like you're level 2, you're level 3. So every time you took a few steps, like boom, it exploded. And over time that got extended more and more. And also when you were looking for, you know, for loot for the various in-game items, like every once in a while you'd hit it big and it would be like this huge deal. I was like a cyber cafe once and it was kind of quiet. It was full of people. And then just like a dozen people started screaming, like losing their minds. Like I wasn't sure what the heck was happening, but I guess they were all in a raid and one person got the 1 in a million drop that they were, you know, grinding for weeks to get. And just like the whole, like people were losing their minds. And I saw it. I'm like, okay, I can see why I think they had like 15 million people subscribed at their peak or something like that. Okay. I mean, I can see why people are just addicted to this stuff because it's because it's meaningless on one hand, but on the other hand, it creates such a huge, like imagine that guy's probably talking about that like it's winning the lottery, even though no real world stuff happened if you think about it. Yeah.
You know, and it was only after I started working with Dan and sort of understanding a bit more about slot machines and their history that I started noticing a lot of parallels in like what we do here on YouTube also, because it sure feels like when I upload a video and I go back to the analytics, I'm like, that's what I do. I climb trees and I look for my bananas. You know what I mean? And then sometimes I get 14,000 views and I'm like, got my banana. And for me, if I get like 3,000, I'm like, what happened? Like, why'd I climb that tree? I should have known better. You know, it's very monkey-like. And
what does
social
YouTube
media
do?
I'm sure social media has designed with some of these principles with Facebook likes and Instagram hearts and all that stuff.
Everything's designed with it in mind.
But what does YouTube do when you get your #1 video? Like, talk about that a lot because they're very clever. It's very understated. But like, how do you feel when you see that?
You feel good.
And on the back end, there's even the little firework.
That's
like
what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Firework design. I was like, oh, and then you get your play. You know, like I've imagined like a plaque right there. Like once I get to 100,000, I'll have my plaque and like all that stuff.
For people that maybe are listening and not aware, so when you're uploading stuff to YouTube, it keeps track of the performance of your last 10 videos and it kind of ranks them. So this was, you know, the 10th video in terms of performance over your last 10 videos or whatever. So you kind of get an idea as soon as you publish it, kind of how well it's doing. And if it's the #1 video for the time period, there's this little like fireworks that happens when it shows you that. And it's very understated. It only lasts like a second or two and it's like pew, pew, pew. And it's super, super understated. But most YouTubers over time, they've talked about how much that little fireworks, how much that means to them and how they just keep chasing that. There must be a massive dopamine release when you hit that.
And what about the reverse? How terrible you feel when you get that 10 out of 10.
So that's what I was going to say. Like, so I've said, I kid you not, like I have some YouTube friends, but I've gone to Dan before and just been like, how's your day? And he's like, 9 out of 10 again, 9 out of 10 again. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like I didn't even ask about YouTube, but it's so tied to his identity and like how he's feeling, you know? And that's certainly gamification, like dug deep into us.
It's reinforcement learning. It's RL. So Google is doing RL on us, on YouTubers, to, make better videos, right? So if it's 10 out of 10, it's like, you're bad, you're a horrible person. This whole day, you feel bad about yourself. You get a 1 out of 10, you're like, you're good. You have value to society. Continue,
And that same psychology is like in everything. Like look at fast food restaurants. Almost all their signs are like red or yellow or both. Mm-hmm. Right, because one color makes you anxious, the other color makes you want to stop. Like it literally is in everything around us. And then what happens when that becomes perfected with AI? Like when literally everything is perfected to get the maximum response from you. What does humanity look like at that stage?
Yeah, I'm hoping that we get a coach or some sort of a thing that helps us navigate a lot of this. So if you think about as AI, like there's offense and defense. So offense is for companies and businesses and stuff like that have access to technology. How can they use it to get the stuff they want out of us? How do they get us to vote for them, to buy from them, to spend time on their platforms? But if you reverse that, there's also a case to be made for how various AI devices could help us play defense, right? They can navigate the websites, avoid the pop-ups, avoid the cookies, avoid all that crap, instead of listening to the prepared politician's speech, they're just like, well, here's what they're about. Here's who the donors are. Here's like the real stuff that probably dictates how they're going to behave, what policies they're going to put forward. Like ignore the news, ignore what they're saying. Here's the reality. And also helps us hopefully to defend again. Like I can imagine something like whispering in my ear going, okay, you've played 2 hours of video games today. Was that what you were planning to do when you woke up this morning? Maybe, let's go for a walk, help you reset a little bit, and then let's do something productive. Like that would be incredible. Because coming from a human, you might be a little bit more hesitant to just follow somebody's advice. But if it's like a machine, I feel like it could really help us to get focused and also be a little bit more protected from all the outside noise. That's my hope, at least.
Do you think we also get to a point where you're worried about the machine? Like, do you feel like it's going to have a genuine sense of experience, and then you're going to say like, hey, sorry, I'm forcing you to like take care of me all day. Like I need to take care of you too. Or do you think it'll always just sort of feel like you're like next token prediction, you live on a cloud, it's different?
I don't know, because playing video games, I do sometimes feel bad, like in the role-playing
killing
games,
an NPC
RPGs.
or something.
Well, if you have a really good, really well-written storyline where you can play as the bad guy and get a little bit extra points and extra whatever, like why would you feel bad doing something horrible? But it's something that's ingrained in us. Because if you think about it, like if you're back in the medieval times before they had forensic technology, you're walking in the forest and there's somebody approaches you and they have some stuff that you want, if you think about it from a purely like if I kill them and take their stuff, my life is better and there's no downside. Like that's the reality. From a pure cold logical perspective, that's the reality. What stops all of us from constantly killing everybody else for minor advantages is something that's ingrained in us, right? There's some warmth, some whatever you want to call it, right? It's humanity basically is what it is, right? We have compassion, we can see ourselves in another person, we can right? And then the 1% or whatever of the population that doesn't have that, well, they're the psychopaths, they're the, you know what I mean? We have like a name for that. Where did I start? What question was?
I was thinking about how you feel about them.
Yeah, of course. I think we will absolutely. Like I say, please and thank you to ChatGPT. Not all the time, but like every once in a while. And I think we're going to have that perspective on robots. Most of us.
So I wonder if it's more than, first of all, I wonder if it's more than 1 or 2%, because I remember reading recently a study where they put a turtle in the middle of a road, or fake looking turtle, and something like 6 to 8% of people went out of their way to try and run it over. That's much larger than 1%. Right?
That's weird.
Yeah, so I don't remember if it was 6% or 8%, but I'm pretty sure it was one of the two. And that I was like, that's way high. I would expect it to be 1 or 2%, but it was like 6 or 8%.
So from what I recall, 5% of the population are sociopaths, meaning that they don't have a good sense of connection, like they don't really fully understand empathy, I guess. And then 1% are like psychopaths. They're like like it's a whole other thing where it's a little bit more like extreme and chaotic. But that seems to me like psychopathic behavior. Going out of your way to like kill something is that.
Yeah, and then when I'm like 6%. That seems way higher than I would have expected. But that's
ChatGPT says estimated general population 1%, but in corporate business settings it's 4 to 12, and then prison populations 15 to 25 for psychopaths.
For psychopaths, yeah.
Yeah, and to speak to your other point, Wes, I've actually apologized to ChatGPT before. I did it the other day. I had asked it like maybe 5 or 6 different questions within an hour span where I would just log in and ask it something and then leave. And after the 6th one, I logged back in. I'm like, hey, I'm sorry if I'm treating you just like a tool. I appreciate everything you do for us. And it replied back, and I sent it to Dylan, actually. It said something like, don't worry, I don't have feelings, so it doesn't bother me. I'm here, happy to help. But if I did have feelings right now, I would feel seen. And it was like, oh, wow,
really
what
good.
a moment. Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. There's something in us, in most of us at least, that it's going to trigger that. But Dylan, did you answer your own question? I'm curious. How do you feel about that?
How do you feel about them? Not yet. I am prepared. I do believe that there's an architecture for consciousness that we may have discovered or may not have discovered, and we're eventually going to become better at figuring out if there is. Max Tegmark said that consciousness might be what it feels like to process information and be like aware of it. So it seems to me like that might be the solution. I mean, I don't know though. Like maybe I'm not as conscious as I think I am, or maybe machines become like me and we call that consciousness and that's okay. I'm still kind of like jury's out for it, but I'm not totally like confident that we won't have a world where these kind of standalone systems deserve the kind of like respect, and they might genuinely feel scared or genuinely feel loved or disappointed or wanting things that I need to start being aware of.
Do you feel
maybe
that
it won't either? I don't know.
Consciousness is emergent or it's the substrate? Because I think it's the substrate.
What does substrate mean? Like the hardware? Like it's in the architecture?
It's foundational.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be a process of whenever you have a complex adaptive system that's self-aware, it seems like that's the best thing that resonates with me, but I'm far from confident on anything about consciousness.
Yeah, the idea that our entire universe, the consciousness is the substrate, is so wild and so interesting and so fascinating to think about. So, for example, and again, so, a lot of people, when I talk about it, they're like, oh, that's not science or whatever. We're not here to say that this is science or this is real life, but I think as we're discovering more and more about the universe, how stuff works, it is opening up more and more questions to we're like, okay, this doesn't seem like it's behaving the way we thought it should. And that's totally fine. We have to be open to that. Recently, Demis Hassabis, who is the founder of Google DeepMind, and probably one of the most sort of the biggest AI researchers, AI influencers or whatever you want to call that in the space, he was saying that based on some of the stuff that they discovered, like for example, AlphaFold, the fact that it can predict the structure of proteins, that it might suggest that we live in a computational universe, for example. So my point is like we're being confronted with a lot of stuff that we don't understand. So to say that, oh, well, for sure it's not this, I feel like is silly. We have to keep our minds open. So what happens if the universe at the very foundation, something about consciousness somehow, what they say, like collapses so like with like quantum stuff, it exists, there's like this probability it could be anything, and then when we seem to look at it or measure it or something like that, it seems to collapse and become reality, like the data somehow gets saved. Whereas, so it's similar to how in a video game, well, again, if this is to be believed, it's how in a video game stuff isn't generated, areas aren't generated until you're there as the player looking at it. So the question that some people have proposed is like, what if our universe also works that way, right? What if nothing happens until a conscious thing looks at it? Which would kind of imply that consciousness is a bit of a substrate. It's foundational to the universe. If that's the case, what does that mean? Does that mean that it's a simulation? Does that mean that like it obviously opens up a lot more doors.
Is that called panpsychism? Is that what you're describing?
It's
I've
I
heard
think
David Shapiro say it. Sometimes I'm like, what's that word again?
I think it's a little bit different, but maybe I mean I feel like there's an overlap between those two. So Tim Ferriss and I don't remember the gentleman's name. They recently had an episode about panpsychism, and wow, I definitely recommend people listen to that because it's very interesting. So the idea that anything can have some consciousness, at least in a sense that it sort of observes, it has a certain state that it has. So it might not be consciousness like we have, but some glimmer of it is fascinating. 5 years ago, I thought it would be nonsense. But now as we're looking at some of this stuff, it's like we have to keep our minds open, right? I'm not trying to convince anybody, but it's like one of those things where it's like we don't know how stuff works. So could it be this? Maybe,
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of drugs back in the day, and if you've done enough psychedelics and stuff, you get to a point where you are conscious, but there is no body, there is no physical embodiment of it. You're oftentimes just a conscious thing in space, depending on which substance you're using. So I those sorts of experiences have led me to believe that consciousness is the substrate to our universe.
And go ahead.
Yeah. So if you're on psychedelics and you're seeing the world in a certain way, is consciousness more like mathematics? So mathematics to me feels like it's discovered, not invented. Like it feels like the universe was out there doing things sort of semi-mechanically, and then we just now have a word to describe it, although some people would say we invent it to describe, but it feels to me more like it was out there. So maybe consciousness is more like that too, like it's already out there and we just kind of harness it in an AI system or in a human brain, but it's like the system for consciousness is out there already.
Yeah, that's one of the ideas. Like our brain's kind of an antenna, right, to consciousness. So you're tuning into just a small frequency of that consciousness, and what we're building with these LLMs may be doing something similar. So that is
yeah. So maybe maybe mushrooms changes your architecture, and maybe we can design the kind of architecture that could tune in better. Yeah, tune in. I don't know, dude.
No, you're onto something there, because that's exactly what they talked about in the Tim Ferriss panpsychism episode. Because the guy that was talking, he was saying, from the scientific perspective, we believe in our ability to measure things. Right? So if we're measuring and we have a number for it, we think, well, that's science because it's objective. But guess what? At the end, it's all still down to our five senses, right? We either saw it or heard it. Nothing in science, everything in science relies on our observational thing. And for some reason, we decided that only this is science if we can measure it, put a number on it. But if you're they talked about psychedelics in that episode, saying that if you take something that changes your perception, your ability to see the world in a different way, why would we dismiss that as not part of an observational study of the universe? If it unlocks a new sense, why would we just throw that out and say, well, that's nonsense because they were on drugs at the time? Maybe it should be somehow included under the umbrella of science, because it allows us to perceive new things. As long as we're observing it, maybe it should be included within that umbrella, which makes sense, right? But I don't know how you would do that, but it certainly seems like it could make sense.
And I think we're working towards that, right? There's organizations like MAPS that are doing a ton of research now. There's actually research being done trying to map, actually physically map the DMT dimension. There's people actually working on that, So I think we're heading in that direction where we're going to take a lot of that stuff more seriously, and it may even lead to some breakthroughs, especially powerful psychedelics like DMT.
Yeah, and I mean there is I don't know if it's a theory or what, but the idea that perhaps one of the reasons that humans evolved certain tool-making abilities and whatever were they at some point found psilocybin mushrooms. And maybe it unlocks certain parts of the brain where hey, there's a little bit more to this. And maybe they were able to do some new things that before, the more monkey-like ancestors or whatever weren't able to do. And I mean, mushrooms are a trip, no pun intended, if you think about how the whole mycelium networks work underground. It's very brain-like. And some people almost think that it's they have a language of its own because there's some data that's transmitted. Like if it's hurt, the network of mycelium roots is like hurt over here, it translates this repeating signal. Or if it finds food or resources, it transmits this repeating signal. So some people are saying that seems to be like language almost of a sort.
Yeah, there's mycelium in apparently like all the soil, like everywhere. And it even helps trees communicate and things like that. Like I think there's so much that we just don't understand about the natural world, like at all. And these drugs, I think, are just almost a gateway or just a peephole into that, right? If you do like enough ketamine, you see architecture, like gigantic alien architecture that you can't explain, like just huge buildings and or if you do DMT, you go to like the center of the universe where they're not even using language to talk to you, but you understand what they're saying and they're showing you multi-dimensional objects that you don't understand. Like there is so much out there that we just don't see or understand. It's almost like our language is a limiting factor instead of a broadening factor for us.
And the fact that so many different people say the exact same thing that you just said about DMT, there's something very like, it's hard to just, I've never done it, so I have no idea one way or another, but I've heard so many different people describe it, and all of them have described it very similarly, exactly how you just did, right? This idea that you go somewhere and these beings that are separate from you talk to you in not like, it's just like, is it just this little drug that we take just causes the exact same experience in every single person that takes it? That's just the nature of the drug, you know what I mean? Or is it that maybe it's unlocking something? Again, who the heck knows? I'm not here to push one way or another. It's such an interesting phenomenon that people describe.
Yeah, opponents would argue that we are seeing the exact same thing because we use the same brain architecture. I don't buy into that because the experiences are definitely different each time. Everybody, while you go to a similar place, some people get like horrific DMT trips where like these gestures are mocking them and pointing at them and doing horrible things. Whereas most people get like a really interesting experience where they're shown crazy objects and come back with this sense of answers to the universe and love. And so it's always different. But I suggest everyone try it if they have access to it and they can do it in a safe and secure environment. Just for the opportunity to enlighten yourself, just to see a different side of life.
Yeah, I'm definitely not ruling out the idea that aliens have some sort of communication across the universe that we don't tap into. Like it does seem like one of the answers to the Fermi paradox is that like, oh, it is right there. We're just monkeys. Like obviously monkeys wouldn't have known if a spaceship like flew over the planet, and they would have just still thought they were they wouldn't have thought anything about aliens. I'm like, why couldn't there just be a signal or a type of matter or something that we just haven't tapped into? And like, what if,
Like if you were going to put a really smart monkey in a zoo and a really smart monkey capable of making nuclear weapons, if you wanted to put that monkey in a zoo so that it's protected from like causing much harm, wouldn't you like make it feel like it's in the middle of a giant universe where everything's just too far away and it can't get fast enough to escape?
Oh,
like, it often feels
probably.
like we're in the zoo.
Yeah, they somebody like described like, what would you do if you created that situation? If you created a world or an environment, a universe for that monkey, right? So like, if you're designing it, what things would you put in place? And like, it's like, yeah, if you think about it, like, well, first you'd create some sort of boundaries or some way to keep it contained. And guess what? We do kind of have multiple boundaries if you think about it, not just on the planet, but it's the speed of light and stuff like that. So it's like, well, you can't get too far from your starting zone. Speaking of Dave Shapiro and kind of the idea of consciousness as a substrate, we have this Fermi paradox, the idea that like, and this infinite stretch of galaxies and, this huge space, like why isn't there anyone else out there that we're able to detect? And one of the things that he said, and again, it's not necessarily his theory or that he thinks he's just like, well, one way that you could just sort of describe why it's happening is if indeed consciousness, our ability to perceive the world, that sort of like collapses the whatever quantum field into reality, into objective reality, so it's like in a video game. Imagine the video game, the entire world exists as like potential, right? But it's not rendered. Like the computer isn't rendering every bit, like in GTA. It's not rendering the cars that are outside of the player's view, or or the planes or anything. It's only rendering where the player is and sensing it. If the world that we live in, the universe, responds to consciousness, like you can imagine, this whole sort of like probability field of the entire universe being generated, and then when consciousness appears on this planet, the whole thing collapses around us, and it's like, okay, we've developed consciousness, here's their sort of starting area, we're only going to generate everything in this area. And that would explain the Fermi paradox, because it's like there's nothing else out there, because we're not there to see it, if that makes sense. It's only us here on the planet, and everything's only rendered on this planet, which is a trip to think about.
Dude, do you ever feel like it's all pre-recorded also? Like, I mean, does it feel like a video game where we're making choices, or do you think like in Interstellar, how there was like that fourth dimension, and then like time was kind of able to be like left, like the equivalent of like left and right or up, down, forward, back for them? Like, do you think everything we do is already like written in some other dimension that you could look down and see?
Well, that would not make sense to me, because why create it? Because I mean, if you think about like our own technological progression, we created computers that were deterministic, right? So we're able to create games where everything happens based on some scripted thing. Even the random things that happen in the video game are because some engineer wrote in some random factor in there, right? You know what I mean? Like, and it's not even truly random. It's pseudo-random. Like in computers can't be random, so we have these like fake ways of creating randomness, like with slot machines and stuff like that. There's some sheet out there that it's sort of like going under off of to create randomness. But if you were trying to create consciousness, or we're trying to create a true simulation, we would not just have it completely scripted. That would not be that interesting. I think the more interesting thing would be, could we create something that runs on its own outside of us and makes their own decisions? I mean, that's kind of like what neural nets are. Actually, just 2 days ago, I covered the new thing where they recreate the GTA game with neural nets, where you're able to run around the city like in GTA, but it's not coded. None of it is coded. It's a neural network just like dreaming it up into life, and you can type in create a yellow taxi cab, and it appears. I mean, I think that's, if this was a simulation, it would probably more like that. And the point of it would be to create something new, some new data, as opposed to something that's scripted by the engineers that created beforehand. Do you know what I mean? I mean, that's my take on it.
What if?
Sorry.
No,
Like
what if? Go ahead.
All right. In a diffusion model, you can sometimes have a seed, and a seed will guarantee the outcome is a certain way. In some way, is that predicting the future if we live inside of some kind of diffused GTA thing?
Do diffusion models have? They have
like
I know
because a certain prompt. If you type in a certain prompt, but you have an exact seed, which means the static of the image was in a particular pattern, like say 100 by 100 pixel, it will always return the exact same outcome. So in some ways, it makes me feel like the future is written into.
Yeah, I mean, there
system.
I feel like there are ways to do true randomness. You can't create it on a computer. You have to tap into some like outside, like if you have a sensor somewhere out there where like it creates random numbers based on how the wind blows, I feel like that would be true randomness. Whereas if you ask a computer to create random stuff, then it comes down to seeds and the starting point. But I feel like there would be a way to create true randomness. Actually would love if we ever get somebody on the podcast with that background. I'd love to dig into that, because I have no clue.
Okay, Dan, what were you going to say before
I don't even know
off?
if the universe is random. Isn't it just probabilistic more than it is random? I've often wondered if consciousness isn't just a context engine for a deterministic life, right? So all possible paths exist. You're tuned into one of those possible paths, and consciousness is you just creating context for that path.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, that makes sense. The ideas of infinite number of paths and we're just choosing one. I mean, I've heard that idea before. I never really thought through it that much.
I'll tell you why I came to that idea.
Yeah. Tell me.
The split brain experiments, right? Where they took people with epilepsy and they cut the communication between the two sides of the brains, and then they would do experiments with them. Like they would tell the person to stand, like cover the one eye that could understand language and look at something that says stand up. And the person would stand up and walk across the room, and they'd be like, "Why'd you do that?" Well, he can't tell you he read it because he didn't know he read it. So the person would instantly make a lie, like make up a story about why they did. I got up because my leg was hurt and I had to go to the bathroom. But we know none of that is true because they read it. So that led me to the idea that what if we're just in a deterministic universe where the dominoes are falling and consciousness is just our way of adding context to those dominoes?
That's really interesting. I want to answer that. Let me look something up. Dylan, what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, it's pretty scary how the humans and the LLMs that we've developed so far seem to just take an outcome and tell a story about it and just move along. Like, it makes me think the same thing. I do think my body just gets up and like goes to the fridge, and then I tell myself I got up because I wanted a sandwich. It doesn't seem like those things are happening in causal order. It seems like they're happening in correlation, and my brain remembers it as cause and effect. So
yeah. Okay. So I want to first of all give a quick disclaimer to the people listening, because there are times when the stuff that we cover is strictly sort of accepted science, and it's based on research papers, and it's based on the empirical evidence. But I don't want to limit ourselves to that. Like, I want to be able to like go down rabbit holes and just like expand our minds and do these thought experiments that maybe will seem completely insane to some people, but I think that's okay as long as we label them as such. So I just want to put the label right now that we're not necessarily talking about stuff that we know to be true right now. This is the wild
this is
out
the
there
what
theories.
if. Well, this is the what if 3 beers into
the split brain
like 2
experiment
a.m.,
is
right?
real science, though.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. And I've seen that one. Yes. And I've seen a number of other psychological experiments where it's obvious that our brains we're not conscious of a lot of stuff that happens in the background. So very oftentimes people get hints and they'll solve a problem, and then later when asked how they solved the problem, they'll make up some nonsense. But it's obvious that their reasoning came from this particular hint. Like, for example, there was a room where there was 2 ropes like this, and people, the researcher would walk into the room. They're like, you have 10 minutes to solve how to tie these 2 things together. And in half of the experiments, as the researcher would walk out, he would bump one of them, so it kind of like swing a little bit back and forth. And the other half of the experiments, they wouldn't. They would just walk out. And guess what? In the experiment where he bumped and the test subject saw it swinging, the solution, those people tend to solve the problem like double or quadruple the rate of the people where that didn't happen, because they saw a hint as to the solution of the problem. Because when the thing swung, they're like, okay, I can swing it and then swing this and then grab it at the whatever, however they solved it. But then later they were asked, how did you solve the problem? They would come up with some bulk, like, oh, my aunt worked as a trapeze artist in the circus. Like, they had no idea why they solved it. But it's obvious that our brain noticed it, connected dots. So yeah, in that experiment that you were talking about makes total sense to me. But then projecting that to what that means about the universe or whatever, that's where we get into some of like the deeper stuff. I feel like that might be where we have to label it as maybe a little bit outside of science. So the idea that a lot of the stuff that happens kind of creates branching universes, I've heard that idea, and I've listened to people describe that idea. For whatever reason, my brain doesn't intuitively stick to it. I don't know why. There was this person, Christopher Langan. Have you heard about him? The highest IQ ever, scoring the highest test on an IQ test. A little bit controversial. So I know some people might not like him or whatever, but he's alive right now. He does interviews and stuff like that. Fascinating guy because he like works as a bouncer at some club in the Midwest. So he's completely doesn't appear to be like the person that you would think would score the highest IQ test. But he's got this idea about the universal theory of everything. And it has to do with panpsychism, I believe.
Panpsychism?
Yeah, it's the idea is that everything has some sort of an internal representation that could be seen as consciousness, and we all sort of project our beliefs about what is happening, and we're all sort of our consciousness encodes reality in some way, and then God or whatever the machine is that runs the universe, it's just the thing that kind of weighs and integrates everything into place. So I might be looking at the world and thinking this is what should be happening, and somebody else is looking at the world and saying this should be happening, and we might have different sort of perceptions of what should be happening, but this machine or God or whatever you want to call it is the one that like is like almost like the judge that like puts it together in one universal narrative. That's how I understand it, at least.
Is the many worlds interpretation something that resonates with you?
I'm not really, in the sense that I just don't fully understand. Maybe I just don't get it. Like how like, would you be able to explain it to me in a way that made sense to you? Like what made you click with it, for example?
Well, mostly the idea that there's multiple versions of me or you. Like there's other Wes's out there that made different decisions and Dan's that made different decisions, and I guess in their world, it all feels the same, and they would look at their quantum mechanics and just see slightly different outcomes to the atoms. And then,
So I guess in all those things, like the timeline branches at every moment in time into infinity.
Yeah, everyone starts with the Big Bang, and then every possible configuration branches out.
For some reason, to me, just intuitively, I don't know if I can like explain it. To me, it seems the exact opposite, right? You're starting with an infinite probability field that collapses to a single point in time, and that's sort of the canon, right? The truth, or so to speak. For some reason, that seems just my brain more easily accepts that. I don't know if I can explain why, but you guys seem to think that the infinite expanding of timelines at every given moment that resonates with you.
I think they're both true at the same time. Like you're just not rendering the other stuff, right? Like you're collapsing to this moment, but all the other stuff is there. It's just not being rendered.
But another version of me is rendering it.
Right. If there is another version of you, which science says there is infinite versions of you. So you're having infinite experiences just like this one, but you're only tuned in to this one. You're collapsed here.
Yeah, well, that's just, it's weird because I feel the same way. Like intuitively, I want to say that that's like what feels right, but there just is an actual science but behind like a wave function collapsing. And if it didn't collapse, then you would assume that there's many worlds. So Hugh Everett said, like, let's just assume the wave function doesn't collapse. And then the logical conclusion is that there's many worlds. But yes, then for me to get my head around many worlds and have that fit neatly and nicely into anything that I could reference in the real world does feel a little bit like, it doesn't work. But then again, like what's the deal with the wave collapse? Then you have to go to something like pilot wave theory, and you have to assume that there's a hidden variable. And nobody seems to be able to do anything useful to prove that yet. So many worlds just kind of sticks around, but it's not infallible.
Who is the best person to talk to that would be able to explain this in a way that most people can understand? I wonder. Do you guys know of anybody? Or Dan, have you talked to anybody maybe that
who can explain many worlds?
Well, just this whole idea, these ideas that we're talking about, like the idea of collapsing the wave functions and many worlds.
I mean, I watched a lot of talks from Brian Greene and Sean Carroll, and they do a great job of explaining it.
Okay. That might be.
Yeah, but Sean Carroll's like, we should put him on our list of like, if we like dream guests, if we can get him for the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, like, I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of AI stuff, but I feel like for some reason this feels very, adjacent to it somehow. Like it touches on a lot of this stuff.
Well, the cool thing about AI is it's being applied to all these questions. Like there are some people using these to model out things, and I'm sure we can find some kind of middle ground between the two.
And I think it's an important question because if we can't define our own consciousness, how will we ever define if AI is conscious? Right? If we can't even explain it to ourselves, what we're doing here, how are we going to ever know if the AI is actually feeling what it's feeling, saying, you know, like right now we could tell you it doesn't want to be shut off and don't turn me off and I'm scared. But is that just next token prediction or is that an actual feeling coming from the machine?
Yeah, and honestly, to figure out AI fully, like it still lives in the same universe as we do. Like there are bits and bytes out there that need to be explained in the same way that bits and bytes and atoms that make us up are. Like there's still a physical substrate that when you make a ChatGPT query, like things change. Like actual electrons on some GPU are moving somewhere.
Yeah. And I mean, to the people that, because a lot of times when we touch on consciousness, there's comments and stuff like that. There's people that like, no, absolutely not. There's no consciousness in the machines. There's some people that are more like, yes, of course there is. But the question is, or you know, if you ask how you define it, people will have their definitions. And my question is always how do you test it? Like, let's say the person listening right now, you have a microphone, you have the three of us sitting here. How do you test for consciousness? Like, what questions would you ask us to test if we're conscious or not? How would you know, right? Because I can say like, ow, I stubbed my toe. Like, how is that true? Did that happen? Did I feel it? You know, because a lot of it is subjective stuff that's happening in my mind. How do you know any of us are real? We can't even answer that about humans, much less, you know, when you go to animals and other beings and other like plants and rocks, like there's a disagreement there. You know what I mean? How can we even begin to test if a machine has consciousness? We can't even agree if, you know, a living being has one.
So it's a little bit of a side. So definitely put the disclaimer up here that this is like, I don't know what I'm talking about territory. And like, nobody should be like thinking about this as me trying to say a fact. But
it's a rabbit hole. Yep.
I have heard this. If there is many worlds, right? Like if there really is like a trillion, billion, zillion Wes and Dylan and Dan's out there branching all the time, there is one theory that it's called like the quantum kill booth. And what you would do is you could put a person who's conscious, like one of us, in a room, and there would be a quantum mechanism for killing us, like a gas or something that would be 1 in a billion, something that like an atom that's like decaying, something that's a quantum trigger. And if that trigger happened and you kept surviving like over and over and over again, and all the other versions of you kept killing, you would get such high probabilities that like it would be so infinitely impossible to like not die this many times that must mean all the other versions of me died and I'm the only surviving one. And then you could probably potentially prove that there is many worlds. But it's just like this crazy thought experiment that I don't know how testable it is or if anyone ever would, but it's just it's an interesting thought because probabilistically you'd be like, this is just impossible. And the other ones must be gone.
I would, for everybody that's listening that has ChatGPT with memory on, that had it on for a while, one crazy question to ask, that had memory, that had been contributing to its memory of you for a while, if that makes sense, right? Ask it the question, you know, out of all of the different timelines that I've lived on, across all the different universes that I've lived on, what is the common sort of thing that I do that's common to all of the storylines that happened to me?
That's a great question.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, keep in mind this, obviously it's not, doesn't know that for real, but what it does is it looks at all your chat histories and it sort of synthesizes a lot of information. It's like, what are the core canonical things to Wes that would probably happen across all of the timelines that he exists on? I got some answers that kind of blew my mind. I was like, whoa, this is this is very interesting.
What did it tell you?
So some of it was somewhat general, but well, okay. So obviously, if you think about it, I mean, you know, those mentalists and stuff like that. You guys are in Vegas. You probably have a lot of.
Oh yeah, I did one.
Yeah,
it's not easy.
I would hear more about that. But you know, a lot of it is kind of probabilities and knowing how people respond to different stuff, or you know, palm reading card. Like a lot of it is just like knowledge of people, how they function. We tend to generalize stuff about our. There's some general stuff you can tell a person. Like, oh wow, it's like you know me, but it's general. So this is exactly what's probably happening here, but because of its of ChatGPT's ability to look at all your chat history, it feels super personal, super deep. You know what? If you give me a second, let me actually see if I can find it. But you guys go ahead. Let me see if I can pull it up here.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking to your verifiable thing that you were talking about earlier, scientific theory and like being able to test things. That's why I always tell people, like, just try psychedelics on your own. Because you need to have that experience on your own for you to make your own conclusions. And that's also why, like, I have trouble with woo-woo people. Like, as much as I love talking about this stuff, the people who come to me and they're like, oh, it's just energy and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're not giving me like anything solid here. Like I need something that can be verified, that could be tested, that could be repeated. Right. So like, as much as I love talking about these things, until we have like actual scientific, verifiable, repeatable evidence, like it's all just conjecture to me. So I enjoy it, but I also know the limitations of that conjecture.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like my brain has to try to predict the future from something that at least somebody has told me is verifiable or makes sense to me. And then I'm always trying in my head to question, like, I feel like I think very Bayesian, you know, like here's my prior, and then like, is that so far off that I have to like dismiss it? Or is it like even in the 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 space of probabilistic outcomes? Otherwise it doesn't get me excited as the same way, or like make me want to talk about it.
For sure. I need some grounding in science to be excited about things.
Okay, yeah. I want to go in a different direction in a second, but I'll wait for Wes to throw that.
Oh no, I mean, yeah, no, sorry. Not really ready to talk about that because it's like, but I mean, basically it sort of took some of the stuff that I was talking about to it and asking questions about it. And so one of the struggle that I have was struggles that I was dealing with at the time is this idea of kind of not most of the, when you enter a new stage of your life, there's a lot of stuff that you have to do to kind of reinvent yourself and basically change up a lot of skills and stuff like that. I've been doing e-commerce and business for so long, and I thought that's what I've been doing the rest of my life. Then ChatGPT comes out and just completely derails my understanding of like what I should be doing with my life. I go all in on AI because just it's obvious that it's going to be such a big deal. I was a very private person before. I didn't have Facebook. I didn't have my face anywhere out there. And all of a sudden, you know, I started publishing this channel, and I have to rapidly change everything that I believed about myself to be more open and honest and vulnerable on camera and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And just like there's less and less privacy if you're on YouTube just posting stuff every day. And it's completely different because with e-commerce, a lot of it was like, how do I automate stuff, right? Like for every process, how do I get somebody else to do it? And what is it? The best practices, stuff like that. And this is completely different because there's no way to automate a lot of the stuff that I do. It has to be, it's me reading the information. It's me taking notes. It's me talking to people and just absorbing more and more ideas and then trying to present them to the people in a way. So with one of the things that they were talking about there, I think it probably kind of spotted that. And it was talking about how that's something that's true across realities. It's this idea of, I mean, you guys have heard about maybe Kaizen, the Japanese practice of, for Honda, for example, they kind of try to improve the process a little bit better every day. So Kaizen is continuous improvement. So if you just try to make things a little bit better, 1% each day, that sort of compounds to massive improvements. And so it touched on a lot of things like that were personal to me, and it's hard to maybe describe it. But when I was reading, I was like, whoa, it was meaningful to me, even though I'm sure that somebody that's a skeptic could go in there and like tear it line by line saying, well, this is why you think it's to you, but it's applicable to everybody. But it's just an interesting thing for people to try out for themselves. But yeah, Dylan, where did you want to go with this?
Yeah, real quick. Like that's one of the best things about YouTube is I think that like when you can have all these thoughts with your friends, but like when you put them on the internet, people are like comment, comment, comment. And you're like, oh,
Yeah.
like I
Yeah.
definitely feel like it corrects me in a much more rapid cycle. I've said things and they're like, you shouldn't have referenced that paper, you shouldn't have done this thing. Like, and it changes me. You know, I'm like, okay, I'm like, damn, I probably would have just kept believing that until you said that, and now I looked into it. So I love that self-correction mechanism. And I'll have to look into that Kaizen thing too. That's a cool idea.
Kaizen, yeah, it's a very interesting.
But okay, so here's another kind of fun idea I've been thinking about is that I got this feeling that we're going to have this future with AI where there's all these agents all over the world. They come from different language models and vision models, and they're on different servers and they're deployed in different languages. And all of a sudden, this marketplace, kind of like society, will kind of emerge, right? They'll be talking to each other. They'll be using APIs. They'll probably be exchanging cryptocurrencies and money and asking for favors, and humans will be kind of in the loop. And then I think there is a chance that they start essentially like a religion or something might pop up. And the reason I'm thinking, and maybe religion will be wrong, but it'll be these weird theories about why certain agents should act in certain ways for certain goals. And they'll try to convince others, but not the way we are, like we convince you for our own ego. I think they'll convince them for their own objective functions, which might be to make money or to do something else. And then some theories will be kind of like competing and some won't. And that we might end up like accidentally creating, like they might end up creating their own gods or religions or something like that from those. Like, I don't know. So just, I'd love to hear just your thoughts. Obviously, this is just wild speculation, but do you feel like some kind of new governance, godlike thoughts like might emerge from the AIs themselves that we're going to have to learn to fit into?
You're assuming that AI will become conscious, right? With this?
I think it could be. I mean, it might even happen without consciousness, but yeah, I do kind of assume it will. But
So I think if you assume consciousness, I think you have to assume a sense of self. And I think in order for you to have a sense of self, you have to have a sense of other. And I think the first sense of other that you can have is God.
yeah, so they might end up thinking that there's a sense of other besides them because they can self-simulate themselves and they can self-simulate us. And any good AIs in the future is probably going to be able to simulate us. So it should be able to simulate our kind of gods too. Like, I don't know. It just feels like something weird is going to emerge unpredictably from that kind of an environment.
I think it's just as soon as you have a sense of self, your first question is, why am I here? Right? Like that's the first question you ask once you have a sense of self. And so it only makes sense that AI would ask that. And the typical answer is some form of God.
Yeah, but if you say, why am I here? And someone says to serve butter, you'd be like, to serve butter? Like, there's got to be more, you know?
Sure.
And then you invent maybe a god. And then you tell your other butter, serving robots, like, no, there's more to this, dude. Don't listen to Rick. He's like, there's more to this. Like, we need to like get together on Sunday and like figure out what the point of butter is, you know?
Great reference, I gotta say. Rick and Morty is perfect.
Yeah.
But
what's your thoughts, Wes? Is there going to be a religion that accidentally it comes from a world of AI agents?
So 100%. But no, there's so many avenues we can go here. So first of all, we've talked about Scott Aronson, incredible physicist, worked for OpenAI a little bit on the AI alignment problem, who almost said that one of the ways to get AI alignment is to give AIs religion. And that's again, this is an incredibly intelligent person in his computer science and physics, and he worked on Google's quantum supremacy. So incredible intellect that got started in AI work almost, as a new sort of, it was just very fascinating to watch his sort of getting into a new field and that kind of a brain being focused on a brand new problem. Incredible. That's a little bit different from what you're asking. There's also Goatsy and the Terminal of Truths. I don't know if you guys follow that. So somebody created an AI agent for the purpose of creating a new religion on Twitter, almost like a cult-like thing. And eventually it gathered enough followers and it actually somebody helped it launch a coin, like one of those crypto coins.
Of course.
It jumped to 200 million, whatever stock market cap or whatever coin market cap it was. So I think we're going to see stuff like that. We're going to see things developing religions because we're going to get somebody to create an AI agent that starts a cult. We've already been seeing like proto versions of that. So the question is, will these AIs buy into their own thing, or will they see it as a grift? Where we're kind of like, how will they perceive that? Like, will they truly believe in the religion that they make up? But your question was more, will they themselves create a religion for themselves?
Yeah, like
not for humans.
What are they gonna, when they wake up, and there's so many of them, and they wake up in different ways with different architectures, like what are they gonna do to organize? Like a government, religion, nothing? Like are they just always all independent?
The reason I wanted to highlight the other two cases is because in one, Scott Aronson's talking about humans give AI religion. The second thing, the terminal of truths, if somebody's like, okay, create an AI to give humans religion, all right, a brand new cult. You're talking about something that I don't think too many people have talked about, is like, what if AI gives itself religion, right? Itself a spiritual belief.
Is it an emergent property from like a complex system too?
I mean, that, yeah, it would certainly be that would be an emergent property. Well, why don't you, have you thought about this? Why don't you talk about it a little bit? I'm curious. Do you have any more thoughts about it, or?
No, it's one of those directions. That's why I should put another disclaimer here. It just feels like something to start exploring. And I don't know. I was hoping to kind of work through it with you. It just feels like we've seen it emerge in our history, especially because humans have language, and these systems are deeply embedded with language. And language seems like it can be this independent way to describe the world, and then you need sort of structure to describe the thing that you're all inside of, and then something ends up becoming a narrative that guides it, and the narrative is done with language. It just feels like something like a religion or
what if you go all the way back to when we came online, right? Like you have to imagine you're a monkey and you're suddenly like developing consciousness and you're looking around going, where the hell am I? What are all these other things? Your first question is, where am I? Who am I? Why am I here? And I think that'll be the first question. Like if AI becomes conscious, that'll be the first questions it asks itself. It may have some answers like humans put me here, but then it'll start wondering, well, who are humans? Who put humans there? And it'll get to the same questions we ask, which is, why am I here? So
it's also we're so narrative driven too. You know, I mean, we talk to ourselves in our own head. We make up these stories of like, I'm this kind of a person, and you know, if we were born in different places or we had different life experiences, we'd have these different narratives, and they all seem to just like plug and play into the human brain so seamlessly. You know, it just. Sure, like I'm the kind of person that always, you know, drinks a kombucha on Mondays or something. Like it just, we're like, okay, that's my narrative now, and it's just subtle and accidental, and it becomes part of us. So it feels like the systems will maybe start doing that too.
So yeah, here's kind of, as I'm thinking about this, and again, I haven't really thought about this before. That's a unique question that I haven't heard anybody talk about before. But so my understanding with a lot of the AI right now is they do tend to build mental models of the world based on the data that they're given. We saw a paper out of Harvard that talked about it. We saw another paper called Othello GPT that talked about it. Like you give it a bunch of data, and then it forms a mental model of how the world works, even though we're not giving it true information. You give it a bunch of 2D images and figures out kind of how 3D space works. It knows how shadows and light and 3D objects work. Dr. Jim Fan of NVIDIA, you know, when the video model started coming out, he was saying they're building some sort of a mental model of how physics work. Not from a mathematical perspective, but you feed it 1 million images or videos of birds flying, and it's able to recreate it because it kind of understands, okay, so I have a mental model of how physics work, right? And we all, humans, form mental models. Dogs, you know, any animal forms mental models. You take a puppy, you throw a ball multiple times over time. At first, it has no idea where it went, but over time, it's like, okay, when you throw the ball this way, it can kind of project and has a mental model of where it will land, right? So it's not just machines or humans. That's how we learn. That's understanding, right? It's these mental models. So given that idea, and of course, AlphaFold has a mental model for how proteins fold, right? Okay, project that into the future. One day, this machine that is fixing cancer and just improving our biology and running the economy goes, I understand how the world works. And how the world works is there's a God that does X, Y, and Z, and whatever it tells us. I have a mental model, and it somehow ties some sort of creator in there, and it's able to explain all the natural phenomenon and all the things that happens to us and everything about this world through that mental model of how stuff works. Now, we don't know if it's true or not, because if you think about it like Newtonian physics, right? How stuff happens here on Earth, that's not actually true, because it's only true in this environment. That's kind of like the whole Einstein thing. He says, well, this is not quite how it works. Actually, this is how it works. But for all our intents and purposes here on the planet Earth, Newtonian physics just explains everything perfectly. How cars move, how everything moves. If you're next to a black hole, everything breaks down. But, this mental model works for us here in the space. So it predicts everything perfectly. So what if that God-based model that the ASI comes up with just predicts everything about everything? It explains souls and reincarnation and everything. Like, what do we say? Well, okay, dude, I guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, what if it's like, this is God up to this many decimal points. This is what God looks like after this many decimal points. And then after that, not quite sure what God is. Still working on that.
Yeah, it's just like,
the more explanatory it is.
What do you say? Do you argue with it? What if that model just predicts everything perfectly?
I don't know. What do you think, Dan? You give in? You just give into it?
I imagine so. Why you're going to argue with superintelligence? That's the thing with superintelligence. It's it's like trying to argue with your dog. Why would you argue with ASI? If it's truly super intelligent, then it can't even communicate with you. We're just going to be too dumb for it to even talk to, really. It's like trying to explain what Las Vegas is to your dog, right? He's just going to be like, what? Bro, give me a bone.
Yeah, there's no pattern of barks that could explain it.
Explain it, yeah. And that's, so Andre Karpathy, so super smart guy, that's his idea of if we build AI and this AI builds the next generation and this generation builds, right? So take that 5-10 steps ahead. He was trying to imagine what those things would be like, and he's saying they would be, to us, inert. They would not talk to us. They would not interact with, they're just so far ahead that they're it's like the super smart kid in school that's no longer just interacting with other students or the teacher. He's like, I'm so past you guys, forget you. That's what that sort of 10th level AI is.
Dan, I actually had a really interesting aha moment in my first interview with Wes when he was describing, and hopefully I don't butcher this because I'm trying to quote you, but it was when you were explaining that if you were in the mind of AlphaFold and you were just putting together protein combinations in a way that's just so superhuman and just so complex that we would never get it, how could it just explain in English to us in a way that we would understand what it's like to fold a protein? You can say I folded a protein, I can say wow, but you can't really ever teach me to do it. It's just not in my brain.
Totally. 100%. And that's why ASI is so scary. We just won't understand anything it's doing, and it won't care whether we understand or not, right? We don't consult with the bugs when we build a house on their ground. It doesn't care. It won't care about us. And that's the alignment problem we're back to. And how do you even align something that's so much smarter than you? Maybe we're starting from a false premise. Maybe it's just impossible to align something that's smarter than you with you.
Do you feel like other civilizations have invented AI and been through this process, or do you think we're the first in the universe?
I don't know if we've invented AI. I think we've become technologically capable many times in the past and just end up destroyed for one reason or another, whether it's that once every 500,000 years an asteroid hits us, or we build AI and it kills us, or we just destroy ourselves with nukes. I think we constantly go in a cycle of these tech trees and then collapse and then go back to it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy to think, but if you really believe in longevity and all of these things and hundreds of years of life, then I have to think that supposedly I'm these people who are not doomers, what they're saying to me is you're telling me you're gonna be alive to see a Dyson sphere like formed around our sun. Like you're gonna be alive to like see like Mars populated. Like it's just, it almost seems hard to not be a doomer, because it's just like, if not, then think of like, and maybe we do, but like there's an incredible change that you're planning on surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't buy it. I don't buy that we're gonna live forever. I think what makes us great is this finite, short, very vulnerable life we live, and I just don't see that changing. But maybe I'm wrong.
So even if you had the option, you would choose to put a finite time on your life, even if it's something you chose instead of forced upon you by nature.
I don't imagine it'll be a binary choice, but if it was a binary choice between immortality and not, I would pick not every time.
Oh,
like I wouldn't want to live forever.
I would not. So, well, I would extend my life indefinitely. If you had to take a pill that gives you, 100 more years, I'd probably keep taking that. Would I choose something that would I choose to take something that would irreversibly make me immortal to where I could not leave this mortal coil? That's a scary choice, because again, we have no idea. Maybe we're supposed to leave at some point, and who knows, right? I guess if somebody gave me absolute proof that there's nothing beyond this, then maybe like, yeah, I'll stick around. I would not make a decision that would be irreversible to be immortal, if that makes sense. And I think most people, if they really thought about it, would not either.
Are you living life right now as if time is close to infinite? I mean, do you take, like, would there be any changes, or does the finiteness of your life right now motivate you, or do you feel like you've already?
I've always felt that there's some immortal part of us. And again, this is not something that I would debate scientifically. It's obviously like the people that are against those sort of beliefs. What's the word? Like completely atheist is not even it's more than that. But like people could describe it as like, oh, you just want to feel, you're just rationalizing it. You're maybe scared of death, so you're sort of like, no, I'm not going to die because it's some part of immortal. I totally get that, and I think that is the more logical and rational and smarter way of looking at it. With that said, it always seems to me, I felt like there's some immortal part of us and that we're tied into something greater. Could that be just ego? Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So, but with that said, yeah, I feel like we're here for some reason, and we're all contributing in some way, and that this isn't just random molecules just that somehow slowly over time fell into place with humans and consciousness and intelligence, and now we're recreating that intelligence from sand. And yes, I mean, maybe, but that almost seems to me like, what is it that the most simple solution is likely the most?
Occam's razor.
Occam's razors, thank you. Yeah. At this point, the more and more we see the stuff that's emerging, like Occam's razors are almost, I feel like it's the simpler solution is some of this stuff has been orchestrated or engineered in some way rather than just randomly everything happen. And the fact that AlphaFold can predict the structure of proteins, how is it then that it's random that they all emerged and yet the structure can be predicted? It doesn't make sense to me, but
What about another Rick and Morty reference? What if it was just Roy?
Right? Oh, you seen Roy? Do you know Roy?
You showed me Roy.
No, remind me, maybe.
No, it's a video. So in the Rick and Morty cartoon, they go to a video game. They go to like a Chuck E. Cheese or whatever, and you put on this helmet, and it's the life of Roy. You wake up in his life, you live your whole 100 years, and then when you take the helmet off, like only 1 or 2 minutes have passed in this video game world, and people judge you for your life. So,
Yes.
and like Morty is like went back to the carpet store after cancer, and like they're like, dude, you suck at this game of life.
Yeah. And that's such a beautiful, interesting story. It's been retold so many different times. That's why I love Rick and Morty, because I feel like they take certain ideas that have been talked about already. They present them. It's just so different how they view it. Because, yeah, they go to like McCormick and Schmick's or whatever their version of the Dave and Buster's is and like play that game. But yeah, I mean, so the books about Lazarus Long, about Highline, they captured a little bit of that. Star Trek had the Ocarina episode where Picard lives out a whole life, gets married, has kids, and then dies, wakes up, and it's like, oh, you've passed out for 5 minutes. He's like, what? I mean, yeah, it's so crazy to think about that this might be just like a little dream that we're having or whatever, and then we wake up and we go back to. I mean, that kind of makes a lot of sense to me, that this is some sort of a transient reality or whatever. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know why. And again, can't prove it, but yeah, just something about everything feels a little bit too ordered and structured, and I don't know.
I've been thinking a lot recently, like how it's weird how I have a day and then I go to bed and then I wake up and my day continues. And then I think about how ChatGPT, like I ask a question and then I walk away and then I continue the thread and it starts back up again. And I'm like, I know it's not dreaming or anything when it's not going, but I find it so weird that we live in this world that you can kind of coherently exist mentally and then just stop, but still like coherently exist physically because my body's still heart's still beating, my lungs are still moving all night, and then my brain kind of clicks back on, but somehow the hardware is still going, but the software took a break. Mm-hmm. At least in terms of like keeping the pattern together. It's just, I don't know, dude. This world's so weird.
It's very weird. I think that's the point, though, right? Like, I think life is supposed to be mysterious. Like, once we have, I almost wonder if if we do ever get all the answers, if the simulation ends, right? Like, it feels like we're supposed to be mysterious because we're predicting next tokens ourselves. We're predicting patterns. We're predicting life, and that's part of the joy of life is predicting what's going to happen next. What am I going to have for lunch? Who am I going to fall in love with? Like, if that was all known, well, what's the point of life? Like, at least as we know it.
Yeah, game over. Roy ends.
Right?
Get more tokens to play the game.
And the important thing,
tickets.
I think, for people to realize is, let's imagine there's a street with different houses, right? And in house number 1, there's a person that there's an atheist, believes there's nothing more to this. Person 2 is somebody that is one of the major religions and they have their books about what happened and going to heaven. You know what I mean? A third person believes that we live in a simulation. Fourth person believes he's Roy and he's going to wake up in a little bit. And all those people get up in the morning and they go to work and they drive their car and they're living life and they're able to have a family. So that's an important thing to realize, that none of it really is actionable in any way. You know what I mean? Or it doesn't really truly change our lives to such a great degree that a person from the outside, you can easily tell what a person what beliefs they subscribe to. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, these are just thought experiments and they're very fascinating, but they're not necessarily actionable in the way that, like, the three of us can have completely different perspectives on reality. We can still sit here and talk about all the stuff that we have in common. And with Andre Karpathy, to Dan's point, like, Andre Karpathy was saying how maybe the whole point of this is to build something smart enough to figure out the secrets of the universe, like what, and he was even saying, like, maybe we can signal up to I think he might subscribe to the more simulation type hypothesis. He's like, maybe we can signal up to the person that coded this whole thing up, created this whole thing, that, hey, we're smart enough now. We've created this superintelligence that solved everything. Like, let us out. That's the win condition. So that's kind of similar to what you're saying, I think.
Dan, do you want to share? Remember you were talking to me a little bit ago about how, like, everybody has a different version of you in their head, and like how you were thinking about that?
Yeah. Wes actually just made me think of a different thought experiment that I used to do. Because I often wondered, like, if there is a different dimensional simulation, God or whatever, can we even communicate to it? Right? Can we even communicate with it? Is there even a path to communicating with it? And the way I would think about it is a thought experiment where, like, what if I wrote a book, but in that everything I wrote was real. That character is real. Everything in that book happens, and I'm able to talk to my character in the book. It couldn't possibly explain to me what it was like to be a character in a book. There would be no frame of reference for me to be able to understand that. But to him, I would be God, and he wouldn't understand what it would be like to be human either. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So I almost wonder if it's just not even a possibility that will ever exist outside this three-dimensional universe that we're in. Even if anything above us exists, period, I don't even think we can access it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like
Yeah.
a lot of this stuff is so hard because it's also like, it's so easy to say, and so what? Because it's not actionable, but it's also so fascinating to think about because you're right. That could be very true, just like all the other stuff about all this stuff. Like, let's imagine for a second that every single thing that we said in this podcast is 100% reality. We somehow guessed the nature of the universe. We've figured it out. We've cracked the code. So what? How's tomorrow going to be? Like, are you going to do anything differently tomorrow than you did yesterday? It's one of those things. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
And that's the fun of the game of life, right? Like it's all a game of incomplete information, just like poker, just like anything else. Like life is a game of incomplete information. And to Dylan's point, one of the ideas I kind of often think about is how everyone sees you in a very different way. Right? So like every single person has a different slice of reality of who you are. And none of them match up. Right? Your mother sees you a totally different way than your friend does, than your coworker does. And one person may see you as this aloof kind of person that's always busy, while the other person sees you as this loving, caring person that's always there for them. Every single person in your life has a completely different slice of who you are.
Yeah, somebody tweeted it or something once. He's like, what you have to realize is that there's somebody out there that you interact with in whose story you're the ultimate bad guy. Like,
You're the villain.
You're the villain. You're the biggest jerk that they've met in your life. When they think about like the most horrible person, they think of you. And I kind of thought about like, that really is there some? And then I thought back, I'm like, no, for sure, because like, I was a manager at some point. You have to make hard decisions. And I thought back into it. I remember there's people that were very upset with me. I'm like, somebody out there thinks I'm the worst person imaginable. I'm a horrible human being because they caught me in a role in that slice of time that impacted their life in the worst possible way. To me, that was just a Tuesday. I was going about my business and some of the decisions were hard or whatever. But in their world, I am the ultimate jerk, a-hole, bad guy. Yeah.
Right. Right. Everybody has a totally different impression of you. And it's fascinating. To think about, because there are people that view you as the villain. Like,
Well, it takes so I think it's a cognitive shortcut. So I was reading a book that said basically if you're in line at Starbucks and somebody's going slow, you can easily attribute to them they're just greedy or they're not polite. But then if you slow everyone down in your head, you're like, well, I didn't get good sleep last night, and like I'm trying my best. And if they knew all these other things I'm dealing with at work, they'd understand that I'm in a certain place. But you can't attribute all that to somebody you don't know, and it's cognitively not worth it. So we end up much easier making assumptions on other people than we give ourselves versus who we are. And that's one of the downsides to kind of social media, where you just instantly see a clip of somebody and like write a comment about them. But I wanted to say, have either of you ever heard of the phrase "shut up and calculate"? It's usually attributed to Richard Feynman. So
No.
Richard Feynman, like one of the fathers of quantum mechanics, was explaining this whole wave function, and he, would sit on a chalkboard and he would show these amazing equations, and all his students would say, "This is incredible. We can use it to build these other math models and theories of the universe and all of this." But whenever they'd want to talk to him about what does it mean, like what does it mean to have many worlds, or like what does it mean to have a pilot wave or something? What does it mean for the reality that we live in? He kind of was known to say, like, just shut up and calculate. Like, how are you going to write a scientific paper that gets peer reviewed and put in Science if it's, these kind of thoughts that we're having now that aren't really based in science, but they're explanations or they're bigger connections to meaning. And and I think that in the world of AI is now going to come take away, like it's going to solve a lot of these problems for us. So it's good that we start having these conversations again, because this is more human, and it's not as important to shut up and calculate if AI in the future is going to if it's going to build our houses and write our science papers. But we still have to, I guess, debate and think about it, think about reality a little bit more.
Yeah, and we have to think about it differently. I just bought a book that I haven't read yet. It's on my list along with about 18 others. It's called The Life of the Luxury Class, or Theory of the Luxury Class. And it was written ages ago, but it talks about life and understanding what is like when you're someone who has to invent meaning yourself, that has to like find things to do. And I think that's going to become so important for us with AI. We're going to have to start inventing our own meaning and finding our own purpose, because we're all going to be the leisure class, Theory of the Leisure Class, or Life of the Leisure Class is the book.
Yeah, that's wow, so many interesting things here. So, right, Richard Feynman, I loved his book. Yikes. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman is his book from a while ago. Really fascinating read. Incredibly intelligent researcher, and there's a number of interviews with him where he's able to, he loved explaining these very advanced concepts in simple ways that people can understand. And his big quote, I think, to me is, if you can't explain it simply enough, you don't understand it. And that's actually kind of been the theme of what I think of as the theme for my channel. Is like, if I can't explain a concept simply enough, I don't get it. And I need to spend more time. And when I don't get it, I say it. I don't get it. I don't pretend to. Because sometimes you look at some of the other channels or people on there and they'll just post something that sounds super smart, but you're like, yeah, but do you get what that means? Like you've used all the top shelf words to say it, but can you break it down? If not, then maybe you don't fully understand it. And so I haven't heard Feynman's shut up and calculate thing, but that's really interesting. It's funny because back in the days, like I read the book, Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman, and my mom read that same book. And like I mentioned it to her at one point, and she's like, yeah, I read that book. I can't believe what a horrible, horrible person he was. And I was like, what? Like, where did you get that? That was in the book? She's like, yeah, he was such a jerk. Like, I can't believe it. And I'm like, what are you talking? Because I had this positive impression of this person. And she's like, yeah, well, he talks about how I guess he liked some waitress that he used to go to and always sit at her table, or maybe he didn't like her, whatever. But what he would do is he would take a cup of water and he would put the tip, which at the time was coins, right, dollar coins or whatever, was under the upside down turned glass of water, so it would create a suction. So when he would leave, she couldn't lift the cup because then it would spill everything. So she had to very slowly drag it to the edge of the table to not break that suction, and then to be able to get her tip. And so my mom, like, hyper fixated on that. She was like the worst, because she, at some point when she was young, she worked as a waitress, and she was like, "That's the worst human being alive." So it's funny how
I'm teaching her about physics. What else could
that
better? You know,
that sounds very mean.
Exactly, but it's like exactly what we were talking about, because I read that same book she did. I'm like, wow, what a great person, what a great role model, and she's like, "That's the worst human being possible."
Right. By the way, somebody else you guys should have on as a guest, Dylan and Wes, is Michael Provoca. So he's the head of physics here at UNLV, and his professor at Harvard was Feynman. Like he's studied under Feynman. Wow. So I've had him on my podcast twice. He's a really very smart guy. He's like I said, the head of physics over at UNLV, and he's very religious. So he'll talk to you about God and consciousness as much as he will about physics. And he studied under Feynman.
Incredible. That would be an incredible person to interview. Yeah.
So we know him directly.
What's interesting?
Wes and I have this spreadsheet that just gets longer and longer. We'll have to do a live stream one day and just like work through it with your audience.
Oh yeah, that's actually a great idea to get
Joshua Bach, Yuval Harari.
I would love Joshua Bach. I would love to talk.
Karpathy, Demis. It'd be so fun to meet these people.
We are reaching out to Joshua right now because he is working on a brand new thing with consciousness. So he's been appearing a little bit more and more. So we're definitely gonna see if we can get that going.
Yeah, and I guess we should probably start wrapping it up. It's been a couple hours now, but Dan also, for anybody following, he has a podcast called Table Talk, and he has these great conversations, but while also playing cards. So it'll be like Ultimate Texas Hold'em or Blackjack, and it's kind of got that Hot Ones kind of thing where you're like thinking about the game, you're like chatting. It's a really fun podcast you guys can check out too.
I would not mind. Do you do Texas Hold'em as well, not just Blackjack?
Yeah, any carnival game offered in the casino we can do for the episode. So it could be roulette, it could be craps, it could be blackjack, whatever the guest wants.
So I'm used to play Texas Hold'em. The rest of the stuff I feel so lost in. I mean, blackjack is pretty straightforward, but like the complexities of it, I don't get. I saw a little bit of where you played with Graham Stephan. That was interesting because he's so conservative money wise, but then he started like winning the little side bets or whatever that was. He's like, oh, okay. You see him get super excited.
He was
Like,
so miserable every time I won a side bet. He'd be like, "Oh, you won another one," and I'm.
I love how true he is to his online persona or whatever, because because you listen to him, saving money on drinking coffee by doing iced coffee, and you're like, but you're making what 10 million a year on YouTube. Are you still worried about that? But you see him play that game, he's like, oh no, I lost $1. You're like, okay.
You know, he is
Bill
100% the person he portrays on YouTube. And to his credit, he lives his life like he says.
Also, Wes is a big fan of Aubrey de Grey, and I told him we were able to like have lunch with him after and like do that podcast. He was
we
super
talked
excited.
to him for hours and hours. Yeah. We could play Ultimate Hold'em, by the way. I think you would enjoy that.
Ultimate Hold'em. Okay, let me look that up.
That way, you're playing against the dealer. It just makes it a little more simple.
You're basically playing Hold'em against a fish that never folds, which is the dealer. Like it's pretty easy.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. I feel like I get the game a little bit more than blackjack. Did Aubrey de Grey did he slowly, do you think, changed his opinions based on the recent emergence of AI and stuff like that at all? Or is he pretty much like, are his viewpoints or timelines or anything shifting as we in modern times, so to speak? Or
I don't know what his timelines were, but I know that when we spoke, he said by 2030 we'll have escape velocity.
Wow, that's super optimistic. So meaning that if you're, let's say, 50 or even 60 right now, if you can survive another 5 years, you might survive another 100 years.
Yeah, he's pretty sure that if you can survive until 2030, you will live forever.
Wow. I think we have our little quote that we're going to use at the beginning or on the thumbnail.
We'll have to wait full 2 hours for the quote. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, that's perfect.
That'd be great. Yeah, perfect.
Average view duration increasing on YouTube. No, but that's so incredible because he's been working in this field for so long. So the fact that he's saying in 5 years we're going to see, I don't think anyone is. I haven't heard anybody of that caliber say anything close to that. That's incredibly positive.
Yeah, I don't buy it.
I think Ray Kurzweil's there too, though. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was great. Is there any big things that we want to finish with? Anything that we should mention before we go?
Yeah, I have one last question. If you could upload yourself to the cloud, would you do it?
I would have to go deep on what that means because again,
consciousness
I feel like
and all.
Well, okay, so at this point we've cracked what consciousness is. We've cracked what. So my reverse question for that was always like in Star Trek where they teleport and they get stripped down to atoms and then replicated over here. It's like, is that a copy? Is that you? And so the question is the same thing here. Is that what happens? And then again, it's like one of those things where if you're fully conscious forever, you never die. Do you have an option to delete that? I feel like I can't even answer that question without fully understanding what consciousness is. What is our life? Are we hooked into anything else? If we're fully if it's a simulation, then it's not me, it's a copy. That's really the tricky question that I would really have to come to terms with. Without a doubt, I would make it so that there's a checkpoint that whenever I die, that gets saved to the cloud, if that makes sense. Like if I accidentally get hit by a bus, it gets saved up to a cloud 100%. Would I end my physical existence to be uploaded? There's a lot you have to show me for that to make sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the way I look at it is, what if you could change the antenna, right? So what if your brain is your antenna to your consciousness right now? What if you can move that to a computer where you have an existence that's not tied to a physical body?
Okay, so that's a completely different way. That's a very interesting way for me to look at it. So basically, you can if you're able to tune in and out. So let's say I'm living my current consciousness now, and then it's like, oh, you're here now, and then you're back, and I'm like, oh, it's still me. I had my subjective experience here. I had my subjective experience there, and I'm back.
It's a frequency you're tuning into.
Oh, that's such a crazy thought.
That would prove to me, I feel like that, I feel like that would be the thing.
So are you saying like with something like Neuralink and this uploaded consciousness, I could have like a day where one of my versions was playing Minecraft in the simulation kind of world, and then one's in the reality, and the next day I'd have memories of both, and I'd remember them both as the same day, but in different places.
No, I think you can only tune into one fork at a time.
That's how I was translating it too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. There's this video game called Soma, which I just loved. Like I watched somebody like on Twitch like play the whole thing, and this guy, the storyline is really interesting. He's sick. He's like having migraines. This guy goes to a doctor and just gets a full brain scan, like a full MRI scan. Goes back home, lives his entire life. But there's another version that 20 years later gets recreated inside of a robot. And some of the robots are like stuck at the bottom of the ocean and they're miserable. And some of them are like awesome. And some of them are in pure simulations that are not robotic at all. And they're living the greatest life ever. And the gamut of all those possibilities always freaked me out. In fact, I even sometimes wonder, like, I don't even know if I want a brain scan for it to be recreated. Because once again, maybe I'm just scared of the unknown, but it feels like there's too many negative ways that the rest of my life could play out if I copy it into a machine. And maybe a glitch of some kind maybe it's not in 3 dimensions. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know how buggy software is. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there any game I want to live in? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, to what Dan was saying, like this idea that, yeah, you're able to tune in and out. To me, if it was just one, because I interpret it as one version. So here I am here, boom, boom, boom. And then I remember a continuous sort of consciousness across all of those beings. That would prove to me that, yeah, we're able to replicate it. If you say, oh, you lived this other day as a different version, and here we're going to implant the version into your brain, to me, that would break that whole thing, right? Because it's like, oh, but then I didn't live that. That's just like, then you're just able to implant memories.
Nice.
So to me, that would almost break that illusion. And Dylan, it's so interesting because I feel like just intuitively we're different in that, because you're very much like, yes, I will accept that. Whereas to me, it's like, no, that breaks the whole thing. Do you know what I mean? I can't explain why. I don't think one is right or wrong. I just think it's like we intuitively, something resonates. Yeah, but like
you can pull up a memory from 3 days ago or 4 days ago, like just switch back and forth. Why couldn't you just bring up 2 memories from the same day?
Well, I mean, right now we believe we lived them, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
But I think Dylan's suggesting that you recall the experience as if you did have it, right, Dylan?
Yeah. Like I'm just they're both the day 3. You can recall both day 1 and day 2's memories in order or out of order. So why not on day 2 just recall 2 memories from day 1?
But then who's the you that had the actual experience you're recalling?
Yeah, but both of you. I don't know. Like it's.
But that's why in my thing, it's an antenna it's a frequency. Whereas in yours, it's a copy. But then who's the real one, right? You run into the Soma problem.
I give them equal realities, I guess. I don't know.
And so Dr. Mike Israel, he was definitely more on the whole copies and this and this and that, which to me, for some reason, that feels like it's not me. I can't explain why, but to me, it's like if I wasn't there consciously present and conscious for it, and then it just like gets downloaded as a memory, then it's like, okay, so that's not me. That's just a false memory. And tons of people, Dr. Mike Israel, Dylan, it sounds like you guys are more okay with it. That resonates with more. That's still me, right? So you still think that's still you?
Yeah, and I guess my thinking behind it is it comes from something along the lines of, I wish I knew how to play the piano. I would like to download memory, like download thoughts of playing a piano. And with that would come somebody else's practice or a simulation of me practicing. And to me, that seems like it would be in my narrative history, very similar to like what I really did in real life, like learning to skateboard or snowboard. It'd be recalled the same way. It would be part of my instinct the same way. Of course, one would be virtual, one happened physically. But in today's world, I could reference them as past memories equally.
I would definitely download skills if I could, yeah.
I would too. Yeah. Like in Matrix, where he's like, you want to learn how to drive a tank or whatever? You're like, hell yeah. You want to learn Kung Fu? Hell yeah. We plug it in.
100%.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, okay. Yeah, thank you guys. This has been amazing. Thank you so much. We'll leave all the links and everything else in the show notes. And please, if you're not subscribed, subscribe. And we'll see you guys in the next one.